I woke up in my Seattle apartment on Thanksgiving morning, the familiar anxiety rising in my chest. Another year, another family reunion, and I knew I was about to face the same old tensions. This year, the family would gather at the Grand Meridian, a luxury hotel in Naples, Florida, all expenses paid by my grandfather, William Carter. I got out of bed, slipped on my slippers, and walked to the desk where my coffee maker awaited. The hum of the machine blended with my tangled thoughts about family, like a song that never changes its tune. I'm James Carter, 33, a research director at a pharmaceutical company, earning $160,000 a year. I live alone in a high-rise apartment overlooking Puget Sound, where I've built an independent life thanks to lessons from my grandfather. My apartment is simple, a desk full of research reports, a bookshelf stacked with economics books, and a framed photo of me with my grandfather at his Florida office. He's a real estate millionaire, the only one in the family who truly understands me. Since I was 16, he taught me how to buy index funds, emphasizing money matters, but dignity is worth more. Those words are etched in me, like a flame lighting my path. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. While checking my suitcase, I let out a deep sigh. I looked at the neatly folded suits, but my mind drifted to my family, people I both love and feel distant from. My sister Laura lives off $30,000 a month from our grandfather. She flaunts Chanel bags, Cartier watches, and lavish dinners on Instagram. But I know the truth. Without his money, she couldn't sustain that lifestyle. My parents, Edward and Susan, are no different. They live in an upscale Florida retirement community, but their $150,000 in healthcare are all covered by my grandfather. They've always favored Laura, ever since we were kids, leaving me to fend for myself while she was pampered. I looked in the mirror, adjusted my shirt, and old memories flooded back. I remembered being 18, proudly showing my family my college scholarship. Laura scoffed. Scholarships are for people who can't afford it, while my parents nodded, boasting about paying for her study abroad in Paris. I stood there, feeling like an outsider in my own family. That pain drove me. I worked side jobs, studied hard, and built a career without anyone's help. Now this apartment, my investment account, with 7% annual returns, all of it is mine, owed to no one. I continued packing my suitcase, but the dread about the trip grew heavy. The Grand Meridian is a symbol of extravagance. Rooms at $900 a night, Thanksgiving dinner at $250 per person. But I knew behind the lights and smiles, my family was just sandcastles built on my grandfather's money. Laura would flaunt her latest purchase. My parents would ignore me, and I'd feel out of place again. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to hold on to my self-respect. As my grandfather always taught, be someone who stands on their own 2 feet. The Thanksgiving pressure wasn't just from family. I once read that 25% of Americans feel stressed during holiday gatherings. For me, it's the feeling of being sidelined. But I still prepared a gift for Sophie, Laura's 7-year-old daughter, a small chess set. I wanted to teach her strategic thinking, like my grandfather taught me. Sophie is the rare bright spot in the family, but Laura always pulls her into her cycle of showing off. I wheeled my suitcase through Naples International Airport, Florida's blazing sun making me squint. After the flight from Seattle, I was exhausted but tried to stay focused, knowing the hours ahead wouldn't be easy. The Grand Meridian, the luxurious hotel my grandfather William chose for our Thanksgiving reunion, loomed before me like a palace. I stepped into the lobby, the sound of my suitcase wheels rolling on the marble floor echoing steadily. The lobby opened up like a pristine, stately space with sparkling crystal chandeliers and soft jazz playing. The faint scent of lavender lingered, but the opulence didn't ease the anxiety within me. I knew. Behind these lights, my family was still a facade. I spotted my parents, Edward and Susan, standing in a quiet corner of the lobby, seemingly discussing something. Mom wore a new dress, styled for Florida's vibe, while Dad sported a casual shirt fitting his retirement age. When our eyes met, they quickly looked away, as if I were a stranger. My heart stung, but I wasn't surprised. They've always been like this, ever since I was a kid, giving Laura all their attention and overlooking me. I remembered my childhood, when I paid for college with scholarships and side jobs, while Laura got everything from our parents. Study abroad tuition, living expenses. Once I brought home a science award, thinking they'd be proud. They just nodded, then turned to praise Laura for a new dress she bought with my grandfather's money. Those memories still sting, like unhealed wounds, but they've also made me stronger. I walked to the front desk, trying to shake off the sense of alienation. Then I saw Laura, my sister, standing nearby, wearing a Gucci dress and a glittering Cartier watch. She looked at me, flashing a faint smile, but her eyes were full of triumph. "James, you finally made it," she said, her voice sweet but calculating. I nodded, not responding, knowing she was just putting on a show. Laura's always like this, flaunting to hide her dependence on our grandfather. Her Instagram is full of lavish photos, handbags, restaurants, vacations, but I know it's all a veneer. A study says 70% of social media users feel pressure to maintain a perfect image. Pew Research Center 2022, and Laura embodies that. I saw Sophie standing behind Laura, wearing an expensive dress unsuitable for a 7-year-old. She fidgeted, as if looking for someone, and I hoped it was me. Every year I bring Sophie a gift, and this year, the small chest set in my suitcase was carefully chosen. I wanted to teach her how to think, how to stand on her own, like my grandfather did for me. But Laura's glare made me hesitate. She wouldn't like this simple gift. Not fancy enough to show off. I turned back, my gaze landing on the brightly lit front desk, as if searching for an anchor in this unfamiliar space. But the sense of alienation only grew, clinging to me like unrelenting fog. My family, with their carefully crafted smiles and eyes as cold as a winter lake, quietly reminded me of a hard truth. I've never truly belonged here. A study says 40% of American families have conflicts due to favoritism, and my family is a vivid, undeniable example, as clear as an unembellished statistical report. Everything around me shimmered with a perfection that felt artificial. The dazzling crystal chandeliers overhead, the glossy marble floor reflecting every step, and the soothing jazz as if trying to comfort something broken. But instead of solace, I felt like a misplaced puzzle piece in this meticulously arranged picture. I approached the desk, where a young female employee with a well-trained smile awaited. Her professionalism made me briefly admire her, but it also heightened my sense of being an outsider. I looked into her eyes and spoke, trying to stay calm despite my racing heart. "James Carter," I said, as if my name could affirm my presence, even for a moment. She typed, scanned the screen, then frowned. "Mr. Carter, I'm sorry, but I don't see your reservation," she said, her voice apologetic. She checked again, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard, but her confusion grew. "I see reservations for your family members, but..." Her voice trailed off, as if unsure how to explain. A chill ran down my spine, but I kept my tone steady. "It's okay, please check again." Before she could respond, I heard the sharp click of high heels, deliberate and purposeful. I turned to see Laura approaching, her Gucci dress hugging her frame, a Chanel bag swinging on her arm, her Cartier watch gleaming under the lights. Her smile was sweet, but her eyes were sharp, like a well-honed knife. "James, you finally made it," she said, her tone mocking, drawing out each word to attract attention. I nodded, not replying, but unease surged within me. The receptionist kept typing, still searching for my reservation, but Laura didn't wait. She stepped closer, her triumphant smile widening. "Oh, no surprise there," she said, her voice growing louder, enough for nearby guests to turn and look. "I only booked rooms for family." She paused, locking eyes with me, then continued, each word like a cut. "Just for the real family, you understand. One room for me, my husband, Sophie, and one for mom and dad. That's it." The air around me froze instantly. The receptionist stopped typing, looking at me with sympathetic but helpless eyes. Nearby guests whispered, their curious glances scanning me. Sophie stood behind Laura, her expensive dress ill-fitting, looking at me with confusion, as if wanting to say something. But Laura grabbed her hand, pulling her sharply, giving Sophie no chance. My parents, still in the corner of the lobby, turned further away, as if wanting no part in this. My heart sank, but I wasn't shocked. I've known this favoritism since childhood. I remembered high school, when I won a science award, and eagerly showed my family. Laura mocked, "Who cares about those stupid awards?" My parents nodded, praising her for a school play role, funded by my grandfather's money. I stood there, 15, feeling invisible. But those moments forged me. I took a deep breath, looking straight at Laura. "I understand," I said, my voice calmer than I expected. "Then I'll leave." No argument, no pleading glance. I turned to the receptionist, nodding politely. "Thank you for trying." She looked at me, her eyes full of regret, but I didn't need pity. I pulled out my phone, opened a rideshare app, feeling Laura's gaze on my back, as if she expected me to crumble. "Wait," Laura said, her voice rising slightly, as if surprised by my composure. But I didn't stop. I walked toward the main entrance, my shoes echoing steadily on the marble floor. Sophie looked back, her eyes seeming to call out to me. but Laura pulled her away, her voice sweet but sharp. "Come on, honey." My parents stood there, motionless, like statues in their own play. I didn't look back at them. The taxi arrived. I opened the door and got in. The Grand Meridian faded behind me, like a symbol of the vanity I'd just left behind. I sat in the taxi, Florida's blinding sun streaming through the window, but my heart was cold. The Grand Meridian disappeared from view, along with Laura's insult, just for the real family. I knew I had to act, not for revenge, protect myself. I opened my phone, found my grandfather's number, and called. The ringing echoed, each tone pulling me back to the days he taught me about independence. "James?" My grandfather's voice was deep and sharp, as always. I took a deep breath, keeping my tone firm but calm. "Grandfather, I was just at the Grand Meridian. Laura, she didn't book a room for me. She said she only booked for the real family. Her Michael, Sophie, and my parents." My parents stood there, said nothing. I paused, the sting of Sophie's confused look hitting me. My grandfather was silent for a moment, then his voice hardened. "This is unacceptable. I'll handle it." I recounted the events briefly. No embellishments, just the truth. My grandfather didn't ask for more, but I heard a sigh over the phone, as if he'd seen this coming. "For damaging the Carter family's honor. I'm done with them," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "Laura, Edward, Susan, no more money." I nodded, though he couldn't see, a strange feeling rising, not glee, but justice. I knew this would upend their lives, but I felt no guilt. They chose how to treat me. I remembered afternoons in my grandfather's office, when he taught me about ETFs, stressing be someone who stands on their own 2 feet. I was 18, listening to him analyze 8% annual returns, feeling like he was handing me the key to freedom. Meanwhile, Laura spent his money on handbags and vacations. My parents relied on him for their lavish retirement. I chose a different path, and now, sitting in this taxi, I knew I was right. A study says 56% of Americans don't have an emergency fund for 3 months. Bank rate, 2024. But I do. 6 months expenses, enough to never depend on anyone. The taxi stopped at Naples International Airport. I paid, wheeled my suitcase into the terminal, and booked a flight back to Seattle. The ticket was exorbitant, due to Thanksgiving, but I didn't care. My investment account and emergency fund were proof of my years of independence. I stood in line, watching the bustling crowd, but my mind drifted to Sophie. Her confused look in the lobby lingered. The small chess set was still in my suitcase, and I wondered if I'd get the chance to teach her, or if Laura would keep pulling her into her artificial world. A flicker of guilt passed, but I pushed it aside. Sophie wasn't my fault. I boarded the plane, buckled my seatbelt, and looked out the window. As the plane took off, Naples' lights faded, like leaving behind my family's facade. A strange relief washed over me, as if I'd shed a burden. In my jacket pocket, my phone buzzed. An email from my grandfather, sent to the whole family. I opened it, reading the subject. Final decision. He wrote concisely, his tone sharp. "Due to actions damaging the Carter family's honor, I am terminating all financial support for Edward, Susan, and Laura, effective immediately." I imagined Laura reading this, her triumphant smile vanishing. My parents would panic, no longer having their $150,000 retirement or health care. But I didn't feel glee, just justice. The plane glided through the clouds, and I closed my eyes, freedom spreading within me. I remembered a conversation with a Seattle taxi driver about Thanksgiving. Family is precious, but sometimes you have to choose yourself. I'd chosen myself, as my grandfather taught. The path ahead was mine, and I knew I'd keep moving forward, my self-respect intact. I returned to my apartment after the flight from Naples, the relief of leaving the Grand Meridian still lingering, but a part of me knew the story wasn't over. I set my suitcase by the door, walked to my desk, and looked out at Puget Sound shimmering under light rain. My phone buzzed incessantly, the screen lighting up with dozens of texts and email notifications. I sighed, knowing my family had received my grandfather William's email, the decision to cut off all financial support for damaging the Carter family's honor. I opened my phone, and the storm of reactions began. Laura was the first. Her texts flooded in, each line a desperate plea laced with manipulation. "James, please. You can't let grandfather do this." One message read, "What about Sophie? She needs private school, a stable life." I read, my heart twinging when she mentioned Sophie. But I recognized Laura's familiar tactic. She always used Sophie to soften me, just as she manipulated everyone to maintain her lavish lifestyle. Then she revealed the truth. A $1 million mortgage on their Florida home, personal credit card debt, and Sophie's private school tuition, all dependent on my grandfather's money. A study says the average American credit card debt is $6,270. Experian, 2023. But Laura far exceeded that. I remembered Laura flaunting Chanel bags or Maldives vacations on Instagram, always with a perfect smile. But now, without $30,000 a month from my grandfather, that facade was crumbling. A study says 65% of social media users feel dissatisfied comparing themselves to perfect images. Journal of Consumer Culture, 2023, and Laura was proof. I shook my head, not replying. I didn't want to be dragged into her drama. Then came an email from my parents, Edward and Susan. I opened my inbox, seeing the subject. We need to talk. They started with an apology, but it sounded hollow, like it was written just to appease. James, we're sorry about what happened at the hotel, they wrote. But you've gone too far. You've caused grandfather to cut off the whole family, including us. I frowned, anger rising. They were worried about losing their $150,000 retirement and healthcare costs for their upscale retirement community. About $6,000 a month. Senior living. But not a word acknowledging their favoritism. No remorse for turning away. When Laura insulted me, the email ended with a blaming tone. What do you think about Sophie's future? Have you considered her? I paused, my gaze drifting to the framed photo of my grandfather on the bookshelf. Sophie, her confused look in the hotel lobby, was the only thing that gave me pause. I wanted to protect her, to teach her the chess set still in my suitcase. But I knew Laura and my parents were just using her to manipulate me. I remembered my grandfather's words. Be someone who stands on their own 2 feet. I'd done that, and I couldn't let my family pull me back. I didn't reply to the email, just closed my laptop. Then Michael, Laura's husband, called. I frowned, letting the phone ring before declining the call. A text from him popped up. James, we're in crisis. Laura didn't tell you everything, but her credit card debt, and mine too, we can't survive if grandfather cuts us off. I shook my head, unsurprised. Michael always stayed silent, letting Laura take the lead, but now he was panicking too. I thought about Laura, how she built her life on pretense, and I knew they wouldn't change easily. I turned off my phone, not wanting to be swept into my family's emotional storm. I opened work documents, focusing on a new research project at the company. The apartment was quiet, only the sound of rain tapping the windows, reminding me of Seattle, where I belonged. I thought about Sophie, her confused look in the lobby. Maybe she'd be affected, have to change schools, live more simply, but I told myself, that wasn't my fault. Laura, my parents, they chose dependence, and now they faced the consequences. I didn't reply to any texts or emails. I dove into work right after returning, as I always did, to find balance. My apartment, with its desk full of papers and my grandfather's framed photo, became a sanctuary after the storm at the Grand Meridian. Rain pattered outside the window, the lights of the Space Needle piercing the night, reminding me I belonged here, where I built my life with my own hands. Laura's insult, my parents' turned backs, all faded as I focused on a new research project at the pharmaceutical company. One morning, my boss called me into his office. James, you've done exceptional work, he said, sliding an envelope across the desk. I opened it, seeing a promotion letter to research team leader, with a new salary, $200,000 a year. I nodded, pride swelling, but not surprised. I'd worked tirelessly, relying on no one, just as my grandfather William taught, be someone who stands on their own 2 feet. This promotion was proof of the years I chose independence, unlike my family, who built sandcastles on my grandfather's money. I live simply, unlike Laura, with her Chanel bags, or my parents with their lavish retirement community. My 2-bedroom apartment is debt-free. My investment account with ETFs yields 8% annual returns, and my emergency fund covers 6 months' expenses. A study says 60% of Americans live beyond their financial means. Federal Reserve, 2023. But I'm not one of them. I joined an investment group in Seattle, sharing my experience with index funds, feeling satisfied helping others build their futures as my grandfather helped me. One day, I received a package from my grandfather. Inside was a watch engraved with "Stand on your own 2 feet." I smiled, remembering afternoons when he lectured about finance, pointing at profit charts. I wore the watch, feeling like he was here.
Yeah.
Proud I didn't let my family steal my self-respect. An email from him arrived soon after. Brief but sharp. I'm proud of you, James. You've stood firm, unlike them. I read it, my heart warming. knowing he understood me more than anyone in the family. I thought about Sophie, her confused look in the hotel lobby, still haunting me. The small chess set, the gift I meant for her, remained in my desk drawer. I wanted to teach her strategic thinking, as my grandfather taught me, but I knew now wasn't the time. Laura was still grappling with the fallout of my grandfather's decision, and I didn't want contact while she used Sophie to manipulate. I kept the chess set, waiting for the right moment, hoping one day Sophie would understand the value of independence. I looked out at Puget Sound, the rain tapping the windows, reminding me of Seattle, where I found myself. I remembered my grandfather's visit, sitting at this desk, praising my tidy apartment. "You don't need anyone, James," he said, "because you have yourself." Those words carried me through tough days, from college scholarships to the insult in Naples. I'd chosen my path, and now with a promotion and financial freedom, I knew I was right. My family didn't reach out much anymore. I heard vaguely that Laura stopped posting on Instagram, probably because she couldn't afford her perfect image. My parents struggled with retirement costs, but I didn't reply to their emails. I didn't gloat, just felt relief. They chose dependence, and I chose independence. My life moved smoothly after the promotion, with busy work and a steadily growing investment account. But my family, Laura, my parents, and Sophie, remained an indelible part of my mind. After my grandfather William's email cutting off financial support, I stopped getting desperate texts from Laura or blaming emails from my parents. Instead, a strange silence lingered, until I started hearing about them through indirect channels and an unexpected email. Laura, who once flaunted Chanel bags and Maldives vacations on Instagram, stopped posting. I checked her page once, seeing her last post months ago, a faded photo, no longer glowing with artificial glamour. I heard she was working part-time at a clothing store, trying to pay off credit card debt and her home mortgage. Laura and Michael moved from their $1 million Florida home to a smaller apartment, living more modestly. I wasn't surprised. Without $30,000 a month from my grandfather, she had to face reality. My parents, Edward and Susan, changed too. They left their upscale retirement community, where $6,000 monthly costs were once covered by my grandfather's senior living. Now they lived in a small suburban Florida apartment, struggling with medical costs without insurance. One day, I got an email from them, simply titled, "From Mom and Dad." No longer blaming, they wrote, "James, we're sorry for favoring Laura, for not standing by you at the hotel. We were wrong." The apology felt sincere, the first time they admitted fault. I read it, a mix of relief and caution stirring. I didn't reply right away, needing time to trust their change. Then one afternoon, I received an unexpected envelope from Sophie's school. Inside was a handwritten letter from her, in round but clumsy handwriting. "Uncle James, I miss you. I changed schools, but I like the new one. Can you teach me to play chess?" My heart tightened. Sophie, with her confused look in the Grand Meridian's lobby, was the only bright spot in the family. I opened my drawer, pulling out the small chess set, the gift I'd meant for her. I looked out at Puget Sound, the light rain, reminding me of Seattle, where I found peace. My family was learning a hard lesson, as I did when I paid for college myself. Laura sold luxury items to pay debt. My parents cut expenses. They were living more realistically, but I didn't gloat. I just saw justice, as my grandfather intended. Sophie was the only reason I kept the door to reconciliation ajar. But I'd wait, with the chess set in my drawer, and my self-respect intact. I returned to work. I was content with the life I'd built, knowing the path ahead was mine. My family might change, but I wouldn't let them pull me from what I'd achieved. Spring arrived in Seattle, and I felt at peace. Puget Sound sparkled under gentle sunlight, the light rain giving way to blue skies. I stood in my apartment, looking out the window, the Space Needle's lights now just a distant part of the view. My life flowed better than ever. I led a major research project at the pharmaceutical company with a $200,000 annual salary and a team that trusted me. One morning I got an email from my grandfather, simply titled, "From Grandfather." He wrote, "James, you make me proud. You've stood firm, not letting anyone steal your self-respect." His words were brief, but each felt like a pat on the shoulder, reminding me of afternoons when he lectured about ETFs, about how to be someone who stands on their own 2 feet. I smiled, saving the email to a special folder where I kept his encouragements. He was the only one in the family who understood me, and I knew I hadn't let him down. I thought about Sophie, her confused look in the Grand Meridian's lobby, and her clumsy handwritten letter from school. The small chess set remained in my drawer, and I started planning to see her in the summer. I wanted to teach her chess, not just for fun, but to pass on my grandfather's lesson, strategic thinking, standing firm in adversity. But I was cautious, not wanting Laura or my parents to interfere. I'd keep contact minimal, just enough to ensure Sophie wasn't pulled into the family's artificial cycle. A study says 80% of self-reliant people feel more satisfied with life, Northwestern Mutual, 2023, and I wanted Sophie to one day understand that. My family, from what I heard, was still changing. Laura worked part-time, selling off luxury items to pay debt. My parents lived in a small apartment, learning to manage medical costs. They sent another apology email, but I didn't reply. I didn't close the door to reconciliation, but I prioritized myself, as my grandfather taught. I remembered him sitting at this desk, saying, "James, if they change, give them a chance, but don't let them drag you down." Those words helped me set boundaries, keeping reconciliation possible without losing myself. I started volunteering with a Seattle charity, teaching young women about financial management. In each session, I shared my journey of independence, from college scholarships to a 6-month emergency fund, and saw their eyes light up. I wasn't just helping them, I was inspiring them, as my grandfather did for me. That feeling brought peace, like I was living true to my values. I thought about Sophie, hoping one day she'd sit across a chessboard, learning to stand firm, as I did. I looked out at Puget Sound, the water shimmering like a symbol of hope. Seattle's spring brought a sense of renewal, reminding me everything could start again. I remembered Naples, when Laura insulted me, when my parents turned away. Those moments once stung, but now they were faint memories. I'd overcome them, not just with my career or investment account, but with self-respect, something no one could take. I opened my laptop, resuming work. The research project was progressing well, and I aimed to lead my team to greater success. The chess set for Sophie stayed in my drawer, a promise of a day I'd see her. I wasn't in a rush, knowing time would bring answers. The story of James Carter in this new script reflects real issues in American society today, from the pressure to maintain a perfect social media image, to financial dependence and family stress, during holidays like Thanksgiving. James, a pharmaceutical research director in Seattle, faced humiliation from his sister Laura and his parents' coldness at the Grand Meridian, where Laura flaunted her lavish lifestyle funded by $30,000 a month from their grandfather William. That facade collapsed when their grandfather cut off financial support, forcing Laura to work part-time and their parents to move to a cheaper apartment, facing medical costs. Meanwhile, James lived independently with a $200,000 salary, a 6-month emergency fund, and ETF investments yielding 8% annual returns, showcasing financial stability that 56% of Americans lack. Bankrate, 2024. James' journey from hurt to peace, along with his plan to teach Sophie chess, shows the value of independence and personal boundaries, especially when 40% of American families face conflict due to favoritism. APA, 2023. Prioritize financial independence and self-respect, as James did by refusing to be manipulated by his family. In American culture, where social media pressure makes 70% of users feel dissatisfied, Pew Research Center, 2022. Focus on building an emergency fund and long-term investments, like James's ETFs, instead of chasing a fake lifestyle like Laura. Set boundaries with toxic relationships, like James did with his parents, but keep hope for reconciliation with those who matter, like Sophie. Finally, inspiring independence in the younger generation, as James plans to do with Sophie, will help build a more sustainable future. Subscribe to the channel to follow James's journey of independence and inspiring life lessons. Thank you for joining us. See you in the next video with new stories about self-respect and hope.